Hello everybody, welcome back to ABA with Dr. D. This is your host, Dr. D, and today we're going to talk about backward chaining. Okay, backward chaining is a very cool type of chaining procedures that can be implemented to help your students learn a variety of different skills. Okay, so let's start off really quickly with talking about behavior chain and what these particular concepts are and how they relate to the children that we work with every day. Okay, so here we go. So let's start with behavior chain. The first couple bullet points talk about it says a specific sequence of stimuli and response. So we are going to talk about stimuli, which is basically something that evokes behavior, and that later on leads to a type of response, which is a type of behavior. Okay, here it talks about that each behavior produces a cue for the next behavior in the chain to occur. So basically we get a response, and that itself is a cue for the next response, and so on and so forth. And we're going to see a visual very soon how that looks. Individual behaviors, so they look different from each other, that are linked together to form a terminal behavior. So at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is work on a very specific or very big type of skill combined with discrete behaviors there. So for example, for brushing teeth, there's a variety of steps that go into that, right? Or tying shoes, variety of steps that go into that, different types of behaviors that go into that, that at the end of the day, basically the focus is to tie shoes or brush teeth or whatever the main objective is for that particular program. Okay, so there's three types of behavior chains that we really focus on. There's forward, backward chaining, which is basically the one we're going to talk about in this particular segment, and there's total task. Okay, just a quick refresher for everybody. For backward chaining, okay, so what is backward chaining? How is that different from the rest of the chaining procedures? Well, the main thing is that for backward chaining, we start with the last step first. Okay, so it's a very different way, different approach to managing and how we're going to teach a skill, right? So we start from the very last step first, and then we move on to the next to last step, which is basically shown here in the visual. Okay, the visual basically shows there that we have three types of basically responses, or three steps. So the last step is going to be the one that we're going to focus on, and as soon as that step is seen, then you're able to provide reinforcement for that. Okay. And as they master that, the child meets criteria with that particular step, we move on to the next step, and so on and so forth. So here, basically what happens is as you master or meet criteria for step 3, you add step 2. So the person now needs to do step 2, 3 to get reinforcement. And then as soon as they meet the criteria for step 2 and 3, now we move on to step 1, 2, and 3, and then there's reinforcement delivered. So that's basically the sequence you're going to notice there, okay? And eventually, basically, the last sequence there is pretty much all the steps combined, right? So for example, like I said, I set the example of tying shoes. So let's pretend that there's 3 steps to it. So step 3 would be the first thing that we're going to work on. Step 2 would be the next step and the first step. And then eventually the main focus there is tying shoes, okay? Okay, so this is the overall differences, right? Because for total task presentation is basically we're starting basically from the top. We're going through the entire sequence, and then reinforcements provided. So that's when you're prompting. You're basically working through the entire steps, and then you provide the reinforcement. Backward chaining, which is when we're talking about, we start from the back, which is basically the very last step, and then we provide reinforcement. The way that I do it is, for example, that I may, for example, if I'm doing tying shoes, I may go through the entire sequence of tying shoes, like actually do the other steps for the individual, and then after that I just leave the very last step, which is usually pulling the bunny ears, right? That's what we're using, and then I have the client do that with me, or I have the client just literally do that last step with me, and that's where I provide reinforcement. The client does that a couple of steps, a couple of times, a couple of trials, and then I start implementing the step before that. Okay, and so that's basically the difference. Now for forward chaining is basically the opposite, right? We're gonna get too much into forward chaining, which there's gonna be another video for that. But forward chaining basically is the opposite of backward chaining. We're gonna teach the first step. As soon as that first step is mastered, then we move on to the next one. Okay. Now all of this comes together when we take a look at task analysis, right? So task analysis is a teaching procedure used for skills that have multiple steps. So I said, for example, brushing teeth, tying shoes, buttoning clothing, zipping up clothing, skills that occur in a chain of responses. So first do X before doing Y. So this is a very specific step or sequence that we need to follow to accomplish the overall objective of getting these particular behaviors. Okay, The TAs do involve, different ABC contingencies. So one occurs for each step in the chain. So we do have antecedents. So the child, for example, sees a toothbrush. So right there's a stimulus. So the behavior will be the child picks up the toothbrush, and the consequence will be that now the child can apply the toothpaste, and each consequence allows for the next antecedent, all leading toward an ultimate goal of clean teeth. Okay. When teaching a skill using a TA, it is common to also provide an additional consequence to increase reinforcement for each step completed. So, for example, and that's really the focus when we talk about the chaining procedures, is that we are reinforcing the steps or wherever we're at, right? The particular area of focus, we are there reinforcing, we are providing that reinforcement. So here at the end of the day, like for example, if that toothpaste, putting toothpaste on is the main objective, we want to emphasize that and say, nice job putting the toothpaste on. So for clients who can read, TAs can also be written out to provide increased support. Okay, so TAs are very powerful. They're very awesome in regards to being able to teach a variety of skills that, specifically for self-help skills, that's really what we tend to teach when we're using TAs. Okay, here's an example of a TA, for example, that's provided here. So here it's supermarket play, task analysis, the cashier. So you see a variety of steps here that the instructions is direct client to play with the shopping cart and checkout. Tell him you will be the shopper and he can be the cashier. So you fill in the appropriate mark for each step of the TA. So the data collection is a plus for correct without prompts. Okay, so that's really good to focus on that. P incorrect with prompt, minus P with correct prompt, plus P is correct with prompt. No responses NR, and minus is incorrect without prompt. So basically here you're basically going through all these steps. So the first step would be sits behind a checkout stand. So if I'm going to do a backward chaining procedure, I'm going to literally prompt all the steps up to number 9. And then number 10 is going to be the one that I'm going to focus on. So here, literally I'm going to teach, says goodbye, come again, or something similar. So that's what the client's going to say to me if I'm doing backward chaining. Okay, so like I said, very much about the difference. Now I guess some people may be asking like, what is my criteria? How do I pick the backward chaining procedure? It really is going to depend on the individual, right? Overall, skill acquisition rate, also their problem behaviors. If they do have a lot of problem behaviors and they get easily there's a lot of behaviors when there's instructions provided, you might want to start with the backward chaining, because you don't want to make this process of teaching a skill, especially a brand new skill, too difficult for them. So you might start with the backward chaining. So there's a thing to consider. Your chaining procedure obviously will be very much tailored or will be selected for each client. So it's not going to be, I'm going to use backward chaining for all my clients, but it's going to be very much about the client. Okay. So here's another one for hand washing, task analysis. You have all the steps here. So yeah, this is all, like, it's very familiar for those that are working in the field, but this is how we essentially put task analysis, and this is now what we're going to be basically focusing on for when we're doing any kind of chaining procedure. So if I'm going to do a backward chaining procedure, I'm going to put, for example, like here it says P prompts. So I'm going to prompt 1 through, there's 11 steps here that you can't see the 11th step there, but I'm going to prompt 1 through 10, and then number 11 I'm going to see if I can get some type of response. Okay, so, and that's where maybe a prompt will be needed at first, but I'm going to fade it out essentially to get that response independent at some point. Okay, so that's going on to something else, but now we're going to watch a video. There's a backward chaining video out there that we're going to watch together, and we can be able to analyze. Okay, all right, so welcome back. This is the video we're going to watch together. This is video 106 from our entire sequence of videos we have for video models. If you want to watch this video independently, you can. This one's called video 106, backward chaining zipping jacket. It's going to be a really quick video here. You're going to see me provide the instruction. You're going to see me basically prompt, and I'm going to have the child here do the final step, which is basically zipping up. Okay, so let's take a look. We'll kind of take pauses as we kind of watch together.
2. Okay, zip jacket.
Okay, there it is. So the first thing is zip jacket. Right, zip jacket is the first thing that I say, and immediately you see me going in there physically, going through the process of prompting the steps. Okay, so here he goes. Boom. So you saw that? I basically left the final step there for the child now to just zip the jacket up. Okay, and that really, once again, is the focus. We want to make sure that this whole process is not aversive, it's not too complex. The child is learning the skills. So a lot of times the children that have a history of problematic behaviors, or also skill acquisition rate, it takes a bit longer. This is probably a very ideal type of chaining procedure you might want to incorporate. So, this is a really good example that I would say. And then obviously I provide the praise. Okay, and I do the high five. So we're gonna do it one more time so we can watch it, so you guys can take a look. So I do provide the SD, the cue there.
2.
Okay.
Okay, zip jacket. Yeah!
Good. So there it is. So I said zip jacket. I prompted. I basically allowed the child now, just left the final step of just zipping up the jacket there. And then after that, they were able to do it on their own. I provide the praise. I provide the quote unquote reinforcement there. And then they were able to, move on. But I hope this video helps you out. There's more videos out there for you. We do have another couple more training procedures left. So we'll probably do a couple more of those. Make sure to subscribe to this channel. This is for you. Once again, all the clinicians out there, families also watching our videos. Thank you so much for the love, the likes, and all that great support we have out there. You guys are the reason why we keep making these videos for you. Okay, so once again, this is Dr. D, your host. Much love to all of you. Y'all take care of yourselves.